How's it going, guys? Back to you with another video after it's been quite a while. This time starting a new project. This is my 2005 F350 with the second best motor ever built. 6-liter power. Second to the 6.4, which is the king of diesels. This truck is 100% stock. Has the EGR cooler still in it. And this truck doesn't even have head studs. Still has its head bolts. And to top it all off, still has its original exhaust. So the problem with this truck is it's got a bad EGR cooler and the turbo leaks. I also forgot to mention how much miles this truck actually has, which is surprising for a 6-liter. This is in miles, 338,000 miles, which is a little bit over, what, 540,000 kilometers. This truck has your electronic 4x4, no upfitter switches or trailer brake, unfortunately. Your standard radio, which is right here. And bench seat, which is a plus. I wanted a bench seat. Yeah, and these door panels, these two doors don't open from the outside, neither does that one. And yeah, I'll do a quick little startup, walk you guys around it, and we'll show you what I'm working on. So this truck came to me originally as a no start. Batteries were all dead. Truck just would not crank. Now, turn the key, everything seems to work other than the glow plugs. Starts up relatively quick. Runs good. But she's got a little bit of smoke. Just a little bit. And there's that oil leak. So if you watched my previous video, I did a whole little bit of a walk around on the outside, and I came over here to the turbo and I was pointing the camera to the degas bottle. In case some of you guys were wondering what I was doing, on your turbo here, this is your variable geometry turbo solenoid, which controls the vanes inside the turbo. When you take the plug out, it opens up the vanes and relieves all the back pressure in the exhaust. By having no back pressure in the exhaust, it's not sending exhaust into your cooler and then in through to your cooling system. So every time I would let off or I would unplug the solenoid, it would relieve the pressure from the degas bottle, meaning that every time the turbo would go into its vanes, the back pressure would get sent through, pressurize the system, and it would seem like a head gasket issue. That was just from a little bit of running just now, and that's because the cooler's no good. So, my task, take the degas bottle out, remove this wiring loom, take the turbo out with your intake, alternator, charge pipes, oil filter, fuel filter. Basically remove everything around the intake, take the intake out so I can get to my oil cooler. Plug the cooler, put it back in, rebuild the turbo, wave my magic wand around it, hopefully it should be good. So I'll take you along for the journey. When I first got the truck, like I said, batteries were all dead. It was just a nightmare to try to get it to turn over. So what I did when I brought it back to the shop, cleaned up all the battery contacts. There was all this hooked up to it. This was on the battery and a whole bunch of other stuff because this truck has a plow on it in the front and there's a harness for it. So all this stuff was all tied into the positive terminal right here, and this nut was loose, and every single wire that was connected here was all loose, including this connection here. Now, goes with the whole battery. Before, this wouldn't even hold nothing, and every time you would mess with this, when I was looking at the truck, it had a little bit more power and you could turn it just a little bit. But now everything's cleaned up, remove the harness from the system, from the circuit I should say, and now this truck fires up no problem. Had to clean everything up. Even this was loose too. This is one of these cheap clamps where you put the cable through and then clamp it down in there. Well, this bolt was almost all the way out and this wire was loose, and you need this for the truck. And if this is loose, this is your crossover cable that goes to the other battery. So theoretically this battery wasn't really doing anything. So once I got all this cleaned up, the truck started to run, and then from there it was just simple diagnostics with the VGT to find out my EGR cooler is toast. And then I took the downpipe off the truck, started it up to see all the oil come out the backside of the turbo, so I know the seals are bad. So rebuild kit is on the way, and plugs for the oil cooler too, and yeah, we'll get this thing going. Alright, so I'm about ready to take the turbo out. All the intake parts going to the turbo removed. D-gas bottle is just resting here, no sense to remove it completely. So doing the turbo now, I got the oil feed lines off at the top. I usually do the bottom line last, that way I don't, you know, accidentally put any dirt or gunk inside the oil line there. So when I take the turbo out, that line comes out and then turbo comes out. If you're taking these out, pretty much intercooler piping, cold air charge pipes and whatnot, like they're all 11 mils. The one at the back, you gotta take off, it's kind of a pain in the ass. Sometimes those clamps like to get stuck. So I kind of got in through this angle here, through that little hole, and then got one of my bars, put it at the other end of the clamp, just with a hammer, just tap it and it'll eventually break free all the way around. Downpipe's unbolted. I even cut it at the bottom just so I'm able to move the pipe up and out of the way, because you have 3 pedestal bolts, one there, one whereabouts right there, and then the third one's up at the front of the turbo right over there. So once you take that out, it's just I gotta work that clamp a little bit, and then the turbo is gonna slide up and then out because you have an oil feed or a drain at the bottom. So that's how you take the turbo out. Now I'm gonna be working on alternator, all the filters, electrical, move that out the way, fuel lines, and then take the intake out. Alright, so this is what it looks like after the turbo's removed. It was kind of a pain in the ass to pull it up, but this is your oil line here for your drain. You have to pull the turbo up and over this, and then you kind of want to turn it kind of clockwise and then shimmy it out passenger side, and it'll kind of come up. You got to kind of turn it and then tilt it back so that you have the intake facing up a little bit on an angle, and then you can kind of get the intake side over the cowl, and then it'll come up the rest of the way. Nasty old turbo. She was really letting in a lot of oil. And there's a little, I don't know if that's coolant or not. Oh look, there's your vanes. They look to be in okay shape, but we'll find out when we take this whole thing apart. I got a 10 blade going for the exhaust side, and bearings and seals, and that's it. This turbo should be good. I mean, there's not really any play, if at all. It spins really nice. Like, there's nothing. I'm not trying to force it, but like, I'm not like not moving it either, and there's no play. And shaft play back and forth. Nothing. Like, this turbo is still good. Just the seal went. I mean, this truck has 500,000 kilometers. Oil changes probably weren't done every single time it needed one. So, I mean, if the turbo seal goes, that's not that big of a deal. You can see, seal 13 blade, gonna be gone. 10 blade going in. That clamp for the up pipes, that was a nightmare to do because it's in such a tight spot. The clamp was sticking out like this, so you could get to this band and this band, but then this one at the bottom really had nowhere to get onto. I kept having to smash on it with a screwdriver and got nowhere with it, so I just sprayed it with WD-40, hoped it'll work its way in, and it did. And then just a little bit more wiggling around, and it eventually came loose. So that put up a fight. But other than that, I didn't even need to take this oil line off. I just left it in, and you know, I have to take it out anyways when I do the EGR, but for now I just want to leave it in. So that's the stock up pipes, stock down pipe. Here's your oil line. There's a seal there. When you do this, obviously replace your O-rings, and then there's a gasket that goes on the top of the turbo. It sits right here, there's a little paper gasket, replace that. There is also an O-ring here when you take this out, so replace this paper gasket, and then this O-ring right here. And yeah, here's your 3 pedestal bolts here. This one was a pain because it was mostly rusted on the head, and with having this down pipe still in the truck, it limits the amount of room you have that you can get a wrench in here and start turning it. So that was a fight, but it came out eventually. And yeah, you can see all this oil and coolant mixture that's in the exhaust. So get rid of this problem, clean up all this oil mess. And when I put this all together, I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna just plug off the EGR. But I'm gonna try and not have to do the oil cooler in this. So I got a kit actually that will bolt here and here. You take this cap off, you put this adapter plate on. It's got a little threaded insert with some airline hose fittings to like a 45. Comes out to a rubber hose, and you can attach a garden hose and then flush out the cooler, so you don't have to, potentially you don't have to replace your oil cooler. I'm gonna try it. I've never done an oil cooler flush because this is my first, well, second truck to have an oil cooler, my second 6.0, but never had a vehicle with an oil cooler like this. So I'm just gonna see if I can flush it out, hopefully, because you cannot buy replacement coolers from Ford or International anymore. They stopped making them. All the stuff that they sell, or that at least that Ford sells, is Dorman repackaged junk. So I'm going to try and hopefully save this oil cooler if I can, and see if it's any good. So now I'm going to work on getting the accessories off and then take the intake off. I'll see you guys soon. So this is the oil cooler flush kit. Aluminum flush adapter oil cooler made in China. Guys from Amazon. This is the plate that you need. I mean, unless you don't have access to any like air hose fitting or places near you. I could have had this made for maybe 10 bucks, but I decided to buy the whole kit. This is what you're gonna put in place of that cap on the oil cooler, so that you can screw this in the top. This is gonna come out a few feet, and then on this end I'm actually going to put a Y in it and be able to run both a garden hose and an air line. So I'm gonna have pressurized water, well, way more pressurized water than whatever comes out of the hose. I'm gonna be pushing it through the engine and hopefully flush out whatever junk is inside the oil cooler and whatever may be in the engine, casting sand, whatnot, what have you. So yeah, I'm just gonna start working on this, do some accessories. I probably won't get this whole thing out tonight because it is right now 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm just gonna work a little bit more and probably take the rest of this out, well, later today when I get some sleep. So yeah, hope you enjoy this little series. If you guys want to see more of this build, you know, let me know. And yeah, see you guys later.